Hello and welcome to the first episode of Creator Collabs. My name is Cher Jones, if we haven't met. And this idea actually came to me because of the first collaborator that I'm going to be sharing in this series. And I'm super excited to see what this morphs into. Because one of the things that I've figured out over time was the fact that when you have ideas, you got to work on them and you got to push them out faster, and you just got to do it and learn on your way down. Because I heard this quote yesterday. I was in a podcast interview yesterday, and it was from Reid Hoffman, and I don't know the exact quote, but at the end of the day, the concept was that if you are pushing out a perfect product and there's no mistakes in it, that means you waited too long to push it out. And I'm tired of doing that, especially when it comes to content. So Creator Collabs is all about creating and collaborating with the creators on LinkedIn and beyond. And also not just the creator that I have featured on today's show, but also all the collaborations that happen in the comments. So you, my friends, in the comments, I would love to make sure that you are also joining in on the fun and having these conversations with us today. So, hey, Steve Worthy, thank you so much for saying hello. So this is exciting because I get to play with the comments. Usually on Just Ask Share, for those of you who know me over there, I don't have all the comments flowing, and I decided to use Restream Studios to showcase for this. So you're only here for the countdown timer. No countdown timers for me, Mr. Steve Worthy. You know, I do not like them, but maybe I will use them. Anyways, I know that Gabe right now, he's sneaking in for just a few minutes. Sorry, couldn't resist, had to tune in to see Cher Jones and Rina Friedman Watts. So let me introduce, by the way, my creator collab for today. Rina, welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you.
I am so excited to be here. Let's stir it up.
Yes, because I was mentioning off the top of the show that the reason why this idea came to me is actually because of you. So we talked about, hey, we got to do some collaboration together. We got to create some content. The last time we were doing that was sort of it was in a LinkedIn audio room, which was super fun. It was just a test audio room. And we've known each other for quite some time because of LinkedIn and social media and all that good stuff. But one thing that you brought up to me was that whole conversation around giving feedback. And you have a story about that. And I'm going to get you to hold on to that story for just a second, because we have a few people that are shouting us out in the comments right now. So Bonnie, hey, Cher and Rina. Hey, Bonnie, how are you? I also see Walter. Hello, hello, hello. I guess he's talking to, because we're not fine sirs. We are fine, but we are not fine sirs. So I'm guessing he's talking to Steve Worthy, because I know those two are pretty close. Let me see, who else am I missing? Oh no, he was talking to Gabe. So they were chatting it up in the comments already. And Mark Adams is giving us already the hail up. So we love that. And but Gabe is happy to see both of us ladies. Absolutely. And Mohammed is saying hi as well. So we've got a bunch of people in the topic. We've also got Bonnie, who we were chatting, and you've been chatting as well with Bonnie in the comments. And that's the beautiful thing about collaboration, is the fact that we can collaborate not only on camera, but in the comments, and bring you guys into the collaboration as well. And that's really what I want to make sure that we focus on this. So, Rina, let me bring you back into the fold, because I've been just talking. And let me see. Oh,
See
hi,
how
Cher.
many people, though, that we know in common. And like, even
Yes.
immediately, like Gabe and Walter were like, we're coming for both of you guys. And
Mm-hmm.
content creators, they all want to connect with each other because they're all doing it. They're putting themselves out there. They're working on their craft. They're solidifying their messages. And we notice the hustle in each other. And we originally connected because I was watching another content creator, Katya from Canada.
Yes.
Forgot her last name. And I think that you had commented on something that she was doing. And I liked what you said. And it can be as simple as that. Just like Bonnie
Exactly.
and I just connected because she's like, love this topic and love share. And I was like, boom. So I sent her an introduction. It can be as simple as that. And you and I were in this LinkedIn audio room and we were vibing with the people in the room. And so if you vibe with the people in the room, if you vibe with the topics people are talking about, it's like such a no pressure way of connecting.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. And Rena, as we sit there and we start to collab and we start to talk, one of the things that we have done in connecting is give each other feedback. And our first instance of feedback, and that's what everybody, that's what we're going to be talking about today, is the power of feedback. Not only giving good feedback, but also how do you receive it? Because believe it or not, feedback, and that whether you're giving it or receiving it, can impact your brand in a positive or negative way, and can also help you move things forward or backward if you are stuck and frozen in feedback. So let's set this up with just the spark of what how this came to be, this conversation around feedback. And again, guys, if you're in the audience, let us know if you're watching team live or team replay. Either way, I want to know, because you know you're on my team. So jump in the comments and let us know. But we want to make sure that you are also collabing with us when it comes to the topic of feedback. And if you have some awesome advice, we will feature it either before or after the show, because there will be more collaboration beyond this. So anyways, back to you, Rena. So what I
Yeah.
want to know is just like a little bit of give them a little bit of the
A
backstory.
little bit of the juice. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I was working for Kathy Heller, host of Don't Keep Your Day Job, and she was putting on a live event in LA. And I had just previously worked on Haste and Hustle, where I was helping book sponsorships for that event. And I got to be a part of the media junket and meet a bunch of the sponsors there. And so one event really led into the next. And I was helping book speakers and sponsors, and I was doing a lot of the behind the scenes of Kathy Heller's event. And I thought that Cher would be an amazing addition on stage. I loved her content. I loved her branding. I thought she could definitely, speak in front of 350 people. So I reached out to her because I liked what she was doing online.
Mm.
And we had some back and forth, and I was booking sponsors alongside reaching out to her, and I was sharing with her, oh my gosh, K Swiss is on board. Oh my gosh, Spirit Airlines is on board. And I was just giving her updates along the way. And I was like, I'm pretty sure this is a once in a lifetime opportunity, and then I started telling her some of the other things that we could include and the pricing. And I was very early on to doing this. In fact, the Haste and Hustle event was the first event that I had ever booked sponsorships for,
Mm.
and it was one of my first forays into entrepreneurship. And I was still making my invoices on Excel spreadsheets. And when I sent share a proposal on an Excel spreadsheet, she was like, "What is that?" She was like, oh, "You're working on this like professional event with professional brands, and you're gonna send me an Excel spreadsheet, girl? You better get it together." She was like, "I have a suggestion for you," and she recommended FreshBooks, which I hear she's been using since 2012. So she still likes FreshBooks, and they should sponsor this episode.
Yeah.
And
They
I
should
was
definitely sponsor the episode, right? Like, come
Hey,
on,
there we
FreshBooks.
go.
There we go, right there.
And, I have to say, at the time, it a little bit might not like it kind of hurt my feelings, but at the same time, I was like, oh, wow, I hadn't really thought about the branding piece. I was
Right.
more thinking about just get her done, you know. I'm like one of those jump out of the plane and build it as you go type of people. And my entire career has been I'll figure it out along the way. And then I was like, oh, that one hurt a little bit because I really looked up to Cher and like everything that she was doing. And then I it took me a little while to like digest it, but I still liked her and I still felt like we were value aligned and that she was somebody that I could learn from. So I didn't really get defensive about it. I just kind of
Mhm.
sat with it. And I think in feedback that's actually something really good to do is kind of like what is their intentions? I don't think that you meant to like hurt my feelings, right? I don't think it was like being mean. It was genuinely like, here, like, why don't you check this out? This could like help you. And I don't have time to show you how to do it, but you need to figure that out.
And the interesting thing is, like, when I look back, and I think, because I am a very blunt communicator, so even when I'm working
Mm,
with my one-on-one clients, the I have to choose my clients wisely, because not everybody can handle this brand of share. Because I'm literally going to tell it like it is. But one of the techniques that I've learned to do over the years of watching that cringe factor of someone's hearing that advice, right, is like, okay, but how am I going to follow up with but here's what you can do. So even with you, although when I look back, there were still ways that I could have softened that, because we're called to speak the truth in love, right? So it's like, how can we do that in a nicer way? But at the same time, it's like, sometimes I'm just like, trying to move things along and get things quicker. But I also know that that brand of blunt is not for everyone, and that's totally okay. And I think that's also the power of personal branding, is just being able to get connected with those you're meant to serve. But at the same time, I think that that brand experience is still something that's memorable for you. So it did hurt, right? And I, as someone who needs to, words matter. Words matter in everything that we do. So we do need to make sure that we're choosing our words wisely, and that how we communicate our feedback, it should be strategic, and it can actually accelerate your brand opportunities, your experience, your reputation, because your brand is, what people say to you, say about you when you're not in the room. So if they have these negative interactions because you're giving bad feedback, that is that's a horrible experience, right? So before we jump back into you, what I do want to ask our audience, our fellow collaborators right now, is I want to ask them this one question: have you received any harsh feedback lately? Yes or no? Because I think that, especially now in this digital age, it's so easy. We're not face to face as much. So it's even easier to get all internet tastic and just start typing away our comments without recognizing that we have to communicate better, as far as that's concerned. So let us know in the comments right now, fellow collaborators, fellow creators. Let us know, have you received any harsh feedback? Let's see. I have one comment from no sugarcoating, all good. Yes, words matter, get it done. So thank you. I don't see your name, LinkedIn user, but I definitely agree. Words do matter, and some people do appreciate that blunt piece of feedback, and that's all good. So, but yeah, when you're thinking, as you've grown and matured into your business and what you do now, and you work with a lot of clients, you're helping them get that main stage, that spotlight, those people on their podcasts as well. And you're also a producer. You do so many things. You've actually been creating content before creating content was called creating content, because you have a traditional media background. You worked with Jerry Springer, you've worked in the news, you've worked in production, and so here you are. Feedback is a part of that, right? Feedback, client feedback, giving client feedback, that's all part of it. So what's one of the strategies that you've used to soften the blow?
yeah, that's a great question. So, one of the things that I have done through the pandemic is help entrepreneurs that haven't really been out there get on
Mm.
different podcasts. And one of them, or a couple of them, I sent like an article to, which gave them tips in follow up. So, like,
Mm.
if I make an introduction, you don't just say, here's my Calendly link. You need to kind of yes and everything that I have said about you to the person I'm connecting you to.
Mm. I like that. I love the idea of yes and, right? Because that's something that becomes super powerful, just as far as, you're removing the buts, which is so important, because, we always heard that the but negates everything that you just said. But like, doing it with a methodical approach, that yes and you're thinking ahead of the game, is like, yes, and here's what we can do, like you're saying.
Yes, it
So
was more like I'm so happy that you followed up very quickly, but here's a way to make the conversation go even better.
Yes.
And here's
Yes.
an article that gives you tips on how to make it go even better. So that way, I try not to be offensive, but helpful in making that conversation and that connection go smoother.
And that help goes a long way because that then softens the blow of giving that feedback, right? Which is really
Yes.
important, right? Is like that
And
help.
it's kind of like what you did with the fresh works. Like, here's a suggestion of a software that might work well for you. And you know what? I actually did follow up and I tried to call them and I tried to navigate it. It wasn't actually for me. But then on my next project, again, the guy that I was working with was like half my age and he was putting together an event. And he was like, you know what? Here's like a super easy free software that I use that really organizes all of your clients and adds everything up for you. And it's called Slim Voice. I don't know if you've heard
Okay.
of it, and it's
I haven't
so
heard
easy
that
to
one, but there's
use.
so many good ones out there now. FreshBooks was like when we met, FreshBooks was one of the top, especially for solopreneurs and stuff like that, and still really good. But there are so many out there, and I love, just whatever is easy to use that levels
Yes,
up your brand, and that
totally.
you're not doing things on Excel. You know what I mean? Which matters, right? So it's interesting that you're sharing that comment around like how to give good feedback, and is really about here's what you can do, right? But there's been a lot of talk over the years about putting the negative feedback in between positive and positive. But what I've
Mm.
seen is that, and I'm going to share this article I found, and what they call it, which is really interesting. So give me just a sec. I'm going to open this up. They call it the feedback shit sandwich, right? So basically, they're saying, don't do this, right? So I got this. This is on the Lighthouse blog. And let me see. I just want to give credit where credit is due. So I think it's the CEO of Lighthouse, Get Lighthouse, was sharing that. And basically, what we're looking at here is something positive to warm up discussion, and then the feedback you actually want to give, and then something else positive to soften the feedback. Meanwhile, what he's saying is this doesn't work. This is because people just want to hear the hear the good stuff, right? So like that doesn't work, and I'm curious because
it
it
reminds
almost
me
feels
of
disingenuous, right?
it reminds me of like parent teacher conferences. You're like, oh, just give it to me. You're like, I know it's
Exactly.
coming, right? Like,
Yes.
no warm up, just go there.
Exactly. So then I found this other article, and let me grab that one for us because it gave us some effective ideas on how to get feedback. And let me just share that screen as I put that on board. There we go. 9 ways to give effective employee feedback. And guys, if you got examples of what works, let us know as well. I love number 1. I won't go through all 9, but I love number 1. Avoid giving unsolicited advice, right? And it's like, so but what do they mean by that, right? And it's really about, you know, are they is it feedback, or is it just and like this is an interesting thing, is like, are they ready for it? So is it like, are you just going to all of a sudden just lay it on them and they're just like, touch me and walk away with the advice, or what are you going to do there, right? So that's one of those things. And then the other thing is about being specific. That's really important. Like if you're going to give feedback, you want to be specific. And then the third one, and then I'll leave the links to these articles in the comments, of course, because we're not here to discuss the article, but come with a deep level of empathy. And I think that is probably the most important out of all of the out of all of the advice that we're going to talk about today is empathy. How are we showing empathy when we are showing up with negative stuff, right? So I just want to
I
show
love
some.
what Mohammed just wrote. I would love to touch on that.
Let me grab it. Hold on.
Yeah.
So hold on. Ooh, that's a long one. Let's get it. um but the feedback, something, it's not explain the truth example, but something harsh, maybe because the other person has a problem with you. But you must understand you're only responsible. Let me just see if I can find something. Let me take it off for a second. I'll see if I can read it without
Sometimes you
there.
get harsh feedback because they might have a problem with you. And
100%.
sometimes they could be going through something. I mean, I've had a
That part.
situation like that where, you've discussed a collaboration, you've discussed your percentage of, what you expect with the results, and then whatever they're going through or it slipped their mind. And I feel like this is a common problem with early entrepreneurs, is that you don't really map out expectations well and what the price includes, and you end up doing way more work than is agreed upon. Or yeah, there's just so much about early entrepreneurship and pricing
Mm,
where there's a lot of fuzziness around expectations. And
totally.
yeah, so that's a lot of what I've learned too. So an example of that, and somebody that I've patched things up with, is there was actually another LinkedIn creator who was putting on a LinkedIn local event, and she reached out to me and wanted me to help with sponsorships. And she had never done it before, and she had a couple of lists of people, and I ended up bringing someone new to the list, somebody that she
Mm.
wasn't connected to. And I said, "Hey, whatever monies I help you secure, I get 20%." And I didn't even charge her like a base. Like, I literally was just trying to help her out. I loved her content. I loved that she was putting together her first event. I wanted to be a part of that. I knew somebody who wanted to speak on the panel. And she ended up like getting that person to give more money than I got that person to agree to. But the
Oh,
way I looked at it was, I got you the yes, I got you the
yes.
person, and give me the 20%.
20%. That's it. It's not about this or that. And
Whether
that's
it's $100 or $200, come on. I
100%.
shouldn't have to
Exactly. You just
like,
ask it for 20. You're not even asking for
ugh.
100%, right? So,
But I
yeah.
didn't invoice her.
Mm.
I just had an email agreement with her. And then 6 months later, when she's coming back to me about, working with me again, I was like, look, I didn't even get paid the first time. I'm not going to nickel and dime you over
Wow.
20%.
Yeah.
But it was also a miscommunication. She's like, you never sent me an invoice. And I was like, well, if see, I didn't operate that way in the beginning. It was kind of like,
Yes.
if I work with a photographer to shoot, and he says, the shoot costs $500, and I'm splitting it with my, videographer. The videographer doesn't have to send me an invoice for half of the bill. I'm just going to give it to him once he pays the vendor, right?
Mhm, mhm,
So
mhm.
I think a
Mhm.
lot of early entrepreneurship is like not dotting your I's and crossing your T's.
And sometimes even later into like, especially creator entrepreneurs, because I know I was just thinking about this today, just as far as some of the things that I need to do to make sure the business side of my business is doing a lot better than the creative side of my business. Like I love to do what I do, but there's places where I can do things really well, like creating things like this. I love this. I could do it
Oh,
in a
you're
day.
amazing.
Like, and it's dope and I love it. But
Yes.
then there are other things that this is, and thank you. There are other things that are not my, they're not my skill set, they're not in my pay grade. So I got to pay someone to do that. And there was an interesting comment as well from Michelle. So she saw me at the Women's Conference, but I like this topic because feedback can make you aware of your blind spots. Yes, yes, and more yes to that. Receiving the feedback can propel you to another level, which look at that, Rena, looking for you. It propelled you to another level because you start to think and position your business in a different way.
Yes.
The key point, love this. And this, you did that. You acted on the feedback, and that can be a game changer. And it absolutely is for your brand, for your business, all that stuff. So, Michelle, great comment from you. Really appreciate that. And let's see, Alec has something to say as well. So I have I always have a retrospective immediate after a live stream where there's a lot of bruised feedback, and is the name of the game is to improve. Exactly. Like there are sometimes it's hard. Like we all, especially when you're trying something new, like even in the show, I'm going to look back because I'm not new to live streaming when this is a new show. And typically when I'm telling creators, when they're starting off a creative endeavor, don't even judge the first 5 to 6 episodes. That's if you're new to live streaming. But for now, I can look at this and give myself that really harsh feedback, if you will. So how can I improve it, right? And
I
I
think the
love
first 50 episodes for podcasts.
Yes, yes. And you are like, let's also give you your flowers. Like you have over 230 episodes in your podcast. So like you really know what you're talking about. So that's the other thing of knowing what you're talking about when you are slaying in your lane and you're giving people feedback that is relevant. Like you, because going back to the empathy piece, it really is about, well, what's like, you're doing it in love, you're doing it to help, but we, as the givers of the feedback, when we're not receiving it, we have to recognize the fact that um, the words do matter, as it was said earlier. So I love Gabe's like, I've been guilty of giving unsolicited advice on a few live stream shows, but I'm a live stream snob. Sorry, not story. I know. Sometimes I send people the unsolicited, hey, DM, because I don't like to do it publicly. And that's another piece of advice, is don't
Yes.
give feedback publicly, especially now on the internet where it's so easy. Like that's actually bad for your brand, if unless you really really are a wordsmith and it sounds like, you're giving them ice cream and feedback at the same time. Like it's so difficult.
That
So
sandwich you were talking about earlier.
yes, exactly. So that's the thing, right,
I
where
feel like
it's
you have to
just
be careful even in the DMs because people can screenshot it and share it and they can white out your name
100%.
and people do that. You have to know who you're
They
giving the
do.
feedback to. Who are you
They
operating with?
do. And then Steve Worthy, who's also like a leadership coach, is in the retail space. So he's no stranger to giving feedback and specificity, providing an example when giving feedback creates a solid foundation for the discussion. This is
Mm,
your Steve. We should have had you on the show because this is what you do too. So there's more co-creation happening in the future. But also let's just get through some of these comments as well. In business work area, we have daily stand-ups with what went well, what wasn't so well, and what we can improve today. It's part of agile development. Alec, that is incredibly necessary. And I think when you normalize feedback, it becomes a community of feedback where people are used to receiving it. Because a lot of times, especially as we've been working in these silos, a lot of people are not used to receiving that anymore. And I find, especially as creators, individual creators, whether you're an employee creator at work or whether you're doing it for your business, the fact that sometimes we like to hide in our creations and not ask for feedback. I'm guilty of that, right? Where it's like, just now, like who I'm with right now, he's able to give me that feedback also because he has um, a true understanding of what I'm doing, the work that I'm putting into it, and then the creative side and the production side, all that stuff, so I can get real feedback. But I've been hiding from that forever. I don't always like to get it,
Also,
or
like, what is your communication style? And,
100%.
saying if I am not acting in the way that I have said that I want to be, can you please let me know? You know, this is how I want to communicate. This is how I want to be. And please put me in check if I'm not acting that way.
Hmm.
Give
Hmm.
people permission to address it.
Yes, absolutely. And this is interesting. So I think country culture has a lot to do with how feedback is given and received. Absolutely. So those of you who are, especially now as we continue to work with more and more people, we have access to more and more people. You might be working with, somebody in one side of the company who is, especially if you work for a multinational, you're working with multiple stakeholders that might be from different countries, and we also have to be aware of that as well, because there are cultural differences around feedback. And that is something that has to keep in mind, as well as if you have international clients, it's the same sort of thing. So those are things that we really have to keep in mind. And there's so much richness in this chat. So my way of taking feedback is being grounded in knowing who I am as a
Mm,
person. If someone
yes.
criticizes me or gives me feedback that I don't like, I know that it doesn't speak to who I am as a person, but rather a reflection of how they've perceived me. And let me see if I can get the
That's such
whole.
good self awareness, Erin. I
Yes,
absolutely love that. And yeah, that is
I
something
love
that
that.
I've evolved to as well. Like I have to know that it's not personal.
Right. It's how they perceived you in the moment. So that's the ending of
Yes.
Aaron's
I
quote. And it
love
says,
that.
it helps me to not be offended, and it leaves me space to examine if I need to improve. And I think
Mm,
that's really important as well. Um, And then so Alec was saying in Scandinavia, we're generally open and receptive to feedback, which is really good. And not it's interesting, like just North American culture, sometimes they are. It really depends on the culture of company. And that's why those people who develop and work on culture within organizations, especially now as culture is transforming within companies, that has to be, I'm sure that's an embedded process of how do we give and receive feedback? What are the communication challenges and strategies that employees can use, or again working with clients from around the world, that's the same sort of thing. So you also need to ask for the feedback. Yes. And that's something that I'm forcing myself to do a little bit more if you really want to know it, because you got to know where you're at, right? And if people know it's okay to be blunt, they're more apt to put it out there. And that's the other thing. When I do muscle up the energy to ask for that feedback, I want it. I don't want the shit sandwich. I don't want that sandwich. I want, just give it to me, right?
There
And
also has to be like a balance though between
yeah,
like knowing what someone's going through and like complete word vomit. You
empathy.
know? Like sometimes people really overshare and there, has to be a balance there of like, okay, I want to understand what they're going through and that influences how this interaction is going to be, but let's keep it professional too.
Yes. Yes. And that's the thing. It's like, again, keeping it professional, being empathetic, choosing your words, all these things
Yes.
matter. And remembering what you were saying earlier is like, you don't know what else is going on. You might just be that nail coffin where it's like things just pop off because of the fact that you just didn't communicate it in the right way. And that's something that we need to recognize as we move it forward. So I want to hear Jamie actually has something really cool to say, so let's get into that. Setting the expectation of how you can be approached with feedback, and more importantly, sticking to the way that feedback can be put across is a must. And I agree with your opinion 100%, Jamie, and you have more to add. So Jamie's smart. He knows to cut his advice into multiple
Chunks.
chats. Exactly. So you can get it all in there in one blow. So you've all said it already, but accepting that you don't know someone's story up to the point is super important. Just because I think that something is the case doesn't make it true.
Mm,
And see, I'm telling you, Jamie is like, oh, he's like an OG with live streaming because he just knows how to do this. So if you ain't where you're at, then you're no place. That's Colonel Sherman T. Porter. So that's a quote. And if you don't ask about where you're at, how will you know? Right.
mm,
And that's the thing. How will you know? And there's so many people, especially in this collaboration space, this collaborative space of LinkedIn. There are so many people, if you ask them, they're not, the first thing that they're not doing is putting, well, there are people like that who are putting their hand out and say, well, yo, pay me. And I want to use another word, but I'm not. So, but true experts in this space, like they'll run you up to the line as far as, okay, well, you want to take this further. Yes, that's going to be a conversation. But if there's so many people who are willing to give feedback, if you
mm.
just ask, what do you think? What do you think I should do next? And yes, Jamie is dropping knowledge. So LinkedIn user what's good, mate? Hello. Yeah. So that's awesome. And I love what, let me see. Bonnie had something to say as well. So feedback versus a lecture,
Mm,
that part. So that whole
yes.
idea of mansplaining. And sometimes I'm not a man, but sometimes I mansplain. And so
You
knowing when
know,
to stop, right?
yeah, recently I did a trade with someone and trades are also hard to do well where both people feel like they're getting equal value, but this one
Mm,
actually worked. I feel like, we both are podcasters, we both have podcast agencies. We had both been on each other's show and I felt like they were equally good. And he said, "Yeah, I'm really looking for feedback. How about, I'll check out your website, you check out mine. I'll listen to a few episodes of your podcast, you listen to a couple episodes of mine, and yeah, give me that blunt feedback." And instead of like, I'll give you an hour, you give me an hour, it was so much back and forth. Like he said something and then I was able to feed off of it. I said something, then he was able to feed off of it. And it was so helpful. And are you going to implement everything in one go? No. But even if you
no.
get one or two things that you can implement immediately, just even little tweaks makes such a big difference. And,
Yeah.
there was a guy, I'm going to give, I think his name is Bob Lowe, and he does weekly, like, I'll check out your LinkedIn.
Mhm.
And I was like, hey, why not? Right. And he does them in level of like, you need a lot of improvement to, I have a couple pointers. And I took those couple pointers and I actually implemented one thing that he said.
Mm. Mm. Which goes back to that comment earlier, I think it was from Michelle, as far as make sure you take the feedback and execute on it. And that doesn't mean, and here's the other thing, is like just because someone says something to you, just because they're giving you advice or feedback, that doesn't mean that that's it. Like that's the gospel truth and you need to take everything. You can take what you need from that
Mm,
and keep it moving. I remember when a friend of mine, it was a long time ago, she had a baby, and I said, the first thing you're going to hear is a lot of advice from everybody. Right. And 90% of the advice is not going to be applicable to your situation because every kid is different, blah, blah, blah. Every mom is different. So what you can say, wow, like it's really having that, and this is going to go back to our PR days, I guess, like that key messaging on how you're going to respond, right? Wow, that's really great advice. I'll think about that. Right. And
yes.
when you have that bridging statement into like that, it's not shut it down, but it's like, I've acknowledged that you've given me some great advice. That doesn't mean I'm going to do it, but that's great advice. I'm going to take that into consideration and have that awesome opportunity to acknowledge is really important.
I can
So,
feed off of that a little bit. So I recently had on Judge Alex, who I was a stringer for, a researcher for 4 seasons on his television show. And
mhm,
that was an amazing episode. And I did feature him on my website, but I didn't have like his own separate page, his own separate links, like customized links. I just sent him the Apple link, the Spotify link, the Google link. And he was like, it'd be better if you could customize that. And I was like, thank you. You're right. Like, I definitely know that's an area that I want to improve upon. I'm not there yet.
yeah. And
Yeah.
that's I love the honest response on the other side. It's like, I appreciate that. I'm not there yet. And because you don't know someone's level of support, what they can actually do. Like we were up till 2 o'clock in the morning because I know I was on LinkedIn and I was messaging you and
Yep.
we were up. So like you don't know what's up, and that's fine. But it also you can still take that feedback and say, well, how am I going to improve going forward? Or where is this in my work plan to make it happen? Right.
You're like,
So those are the
noted.
things.
Yeah.
Yes. Noted. Exactly. So that comes back down to that's great advice. I'll definitely consider that. I'll definitely keep that in mind and then just keep it moving. Right. So it's like, how do you respond to that? So let's jump back into the chat because I saw something that I wanted to address. So I always remind myself that I can take both solicited and unsolicited feedback because at the end of it all, I have the power. So look at that, Mark. You are just right on with us in this conversation. I have the power of choice. This allows me to say thank you. Then I exercise my power of choice to choose with regard to what was said. I love it.
Yes.
And
Or what not to say at all.
exactly. And James says this is a great topic. We appreciate that, James. And as well, Bonnie, this is so important to decipher who is giving the feedback because that's another thing, right? Are you respecting the who it's coming from? Right. So that is really important that we do that. And sorry, I'm just blocking a user on YouTube. Yes, so naked girls on YouTube. No, thanks, but we can do that. That's okay. We can remove that. All right. So let us continue. I'm just getting into the chat. Don't tell me I lost half of my chat comments. So guys, um trying to block people on YouTube, leaving us craziness has lost me some of my stuff. So we will get them back. I'm sorry if I missed your comment. I know Bonnie, you were saying something, but at the end of the day, feedback is incredibly important. And if you were to give somebody that final piece of advice, they've watched this show. We started off talking about, my harsh feedback. While it was helpful, it was still harsh. So, and you were able to use it. But again, these are experiences with my brand. Great that, we're able to do this. How many years, like years and years later, like this is way before pandemic time. So,
Yes.
what advice do you have to leave people off with?
Yeah, a couple things. I would say the power of pause is really big and not being reactive immediately with everything that's going on in your mind in regards to what that conversation was, right? Like sometimes time is a healer and it also gives you
Mm.
perspective. Another thing I would say is go to somebody who has more experience than you, somebody that you trust and your value aligned with. It's usually my dad, and ask him his thoughts in the interaction. How would he respond? Am I taking things personal? Somebody who knows you, somebody who has your best interests in mind, and get their take because you might just be like having an emotional reaction.
I love that. And I mean, we hear that advice as far as not responding in anger or sending something in text, and like how much more powerful it is, even like one getting that, let me not jump off. How many times have I done that where call the BF and I'm like, okay, I don't want to jump off a ledge here. So talk me off this ledge or and agree with me. I don't care. Just do
Yes.
something. I need to get this out. And sometimes you just need to get it out, and other times it's really around giving that time, especially in that emotional place, or it did I and that's the other thing, is like getting that outside perspective of, did I interpret this right? Did I am I hearing what I think I heard? Because
Yes.
that bouncing off the wall is so important, like having someone to bounce, someone you trust. So going back to what Bonnie was saying earlier, it's like it's who you're getting the feedback from, but also as you ask for feedback about the feedback. That's a whole new strategy in itself, and you have your dad, which always is bringing wisdom into what you do. If you don't know about her dad, she's got over 230 episodes of her dad's advice weaved into everything that she's learned about life and the people that she's talking to and meeting. And phenomenal podcast, by the way. So,
Thank you. And me and my
yes.
dad don't always see eye to eye, which is
Yeah.
interesting. And I feel like the more conversations that we have and the more I challenge his advice, like I feel like we're both learning,
Mm-hmm.
which is
Mm-hmm.
so cool. It's amazing to see his progress even through this. And, I did an episode with him last night. I was like, Dad, do you even listen to any other podcasts? He's like, I actually have checked out a couple other ones now, which is amazing for somebody 65 plus. And even if he were to just listen to the guests that I'm having, I've given him 230 now, and he
Yeah.
just takes one thing from each one. I mean, it's shifting his perspective. And I feel like it's a bridge generationally.
Mhm, mhm, mhm. And that's what's really powerful even about, like, this whole concept of collaborating with people, not just
Yes.
collaborating on screen, but in the comments, because this is a community of people who have a wealth of information, who can
Yes.
provide feedback. And like you said, you've networked with people, or we got connected because you saw somebody in the comments and then we connected. And I do that all the time. People do that all the time. People
Yes.
will connect. It's not even with the collaborators up top. People will connect in the comments with each other. Forget the collaborator. You don't even know these things are happening, and that's amazing just to see that. So we have this wealth of feedback available to us, and it is coming down to asking for it. And as Jamie's saying, feedback can be harsh, as long as it's constructive. Give me advice on what I can do better, or the things I can look into improve, and I'll take the lumps. I'm like you, Jamie. I'll take the lumps, and sometimes it's just what I need to do more is ask for the feedback and stop staying in my silos, because oftentimes that feedback, if I asked for it earlier, I could have put something out 3 iterations ago, but I've been in my
Yes.
head too long, right? So it's also, feedback's also an accelerator.
I want to also say that, I had a 10th grader reach out to me recently, and he was doing a project about the shooting in Poway, California. And I had
Mm,
interviewed the guy who stopped the shooting.
mm,
So it's completely different perspective. Like I have an eighth grader, and I was like, you wouldn't want to interview me, but how cool that a 10th grader that like found my show wants to
Mhm.
interview me about a story that I did. So one thing
Wow.
that I would say is collaborate with 10th graders, collaborate with people in their
Yes.
60s, collaborate
Yes.
with people you admire, and then collaborate with people who have different opinions than you, that have
Mm.
lived different lives than you, that have had different experiences than you. And that's how you really can get feedback and new perspectives.
Absolutely. And that's the thing that I love about like the kind of work we do in a consultative way is the fact that because we're leveraging communication skills like communication planning, PR, broadcasting, journalism, all that kind of stuff, we're all about the story. So it doesn't matter about the niche. It's about leveraging a comm strategy for our clients in order to get to where they need to go, whether it's their brands or getting in podcasts, whatever it is, right? So what that gives us is all these different diverse inputs to grow our perspective on how we do things. And when you have a broadened perspective, you're able to you're able to just do better, right? So look at this. I love this what Jamie's saying is, but the social contract needs to be there to allow the feedback to be harsh. And a few other users have also said that, collaborators have also said that, is if the person you're giving the feedback to doesn't want harsh, then don't be harsh. And I've often found myself now saying, okay, I'm pretty blunt. Is this something I can scale back and, it's okay. Just let me know how you like to receive feedback, especially if it's a working relationship, asking. So like, I love that language around that contract, right? You establish how you're going to do that. Right. So I love that. And then Steve says feedback can be accelerator. Yes, it's a great, thank you. It definitely is something that, has, when I ask for it and it's just get it, especially in the creative space as creators, sometimes we just want to like, I've been working so hard on this. I don't know if I can handle the negative space, but I have to.
I love the idea of like, and that could even be a funny piece of content, like creating a contract. Like
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that could be
Absolutely.
so funny. Like what would your contract look like?
Um, I would say that my contract would be more about me having a date and time every week or every other week so that I'm forcing myself, because I can handle the blunt stuff, bring it to me, but it's like forcing myself to like get ready for it, right? Like just like the okay, give it to me. Because I don't want the, it was funny because Bonnie, you and I were talking last night about, do you want Simon Cowell feedback or do you want Paula Abdul feedback? For those of you who don't know, 20 years ago when American Idol just started, it was Simon, Paula, and Randy. And Paula was like, "Hey, you guys are doing fantastic. I love the way you look on stage." And Simon's just like, "Listen, how you look is not going to get you your record contract." Blah 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 blah. And it's like everybody just, yeah, it's great, Paula, but Simon, what do you think? So most people do want that kind of feedback. So it's really interesting to look at that.
Definitely.
And let's see, feedback that is constructive and empathetic is the right sandwich. Yes, to provide a person who is open, and that's the key point there, Walter, open to receiving it. And Bonnie is also piggyback on that. Know your audience, so
Oh,
that
that's a
becomes
big
that
one.
thing too.
That's a
Yes,
big one.
that's a big one. And it is important to know the difference between someone offering legitimate feedback, which you can work with, and someone who is intentionally aiming to hurt you. There's a world of difference, and you can legitimately ignore the haters. Do you know what, Jamie? If you take all of your quotes, all of your comments in your chat and string it together, you have a blog post. I'm just saying. I'm just saying, put it out there.
Definitely.
There's some you given, especially like the level, and there's a few other people have been doing this well, but Jamie's really been collaborating in the comments, so he would be my featured collaborator for today. Jamie, thank you so much. Also, Bonnie, you are definitely a runner up with the advice as well. Yes, it needs to be feedback that's realistic and actionable, not You should change the name of the registered trademark company. Yeah, exactly. That can I really work on that? No, that's my company. I've already done everything, blah, blah, blah. So I love this. What a conversation. So guys, we are going to wind down in this conversation right now, but I do appreciate how everybody just got behind this whole idea of, yo, we need to give feedback. We need to do it. We need to take it. We need to take the lumps sometimes, and let's keep the party going. So
Should we
we
challenge people to go do it and then report back?
yes, 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 yes.
Yeah.
Give someone feedback and also solicit feedback from somebody. So you've got
Ooh.
two. So you want to give it to someone who you know that you can pour into. And it may be, again, like this community is so awesome. And we talked about not giving unsolicited feedback, but maybe if you have the relationship, there's also that contract there. So you might be able to do it in, or to give it and deliver it in a way that makes sense, that someone actually would appreciate it. But also, for those of you who struggle with, you love it when you get it, because I'm one of those. I love it when I get it, and I'm so thankful when I get it. But sometimes I stay too deep in my work before I ask for it, and that is a problem, because like we talked about earlier, and Steve actually underscored the point, was feedback is an accelerator, and when you get it, you can improve faster, right? And that's why we need to do that. And Garen jumped in on the show. So, hey, hello. Nice to have you here on live. So, whether you are watching this live or on the replay, definitely share with us your feedback, advice. This is all about the collaboration, not just between me and Rina, but between all of the collaborators who are in the comments. Because yes, there is so much, like Bonnie says, there's so much content in the comments, and this is a great way to really show what you know and share what you know, and also help people along the way. So this has been a
I have an easy
phenomenal.
way for people to go give that feedback. If there's
Okay.
somebody who has wanted to collaborate with you in the past,
Mm-hmm.
circle back in your DMs and say, hey,
Mm.
you wanted to collaborate with me in the past. We didn't make that happen. I'm giving
Yes.
you that feedback. Let's do it and put it on the calendar now.
Ooh, I love that. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to, because a lot of people know me from my live stream, Just Ask Share, which is very specific. It's a one woman show. That's it. But I've always wanted to have a format where I could collaborate with other creators, and learn things and just do things just outside, but still connected to my brand, but outside of that. So but I want to make sure that we look at this opportunity right here, and 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 collaborate. So for me, it was like this opportunity to collaborate in a new way. And one, thank you, Rina, for even planting the seed, right? Which evolved into this very quickly. And that's the other thing. So moving on that, making that feedback actionable, and then moving on. Don't be that person who has to roll in perfect. That's what feedback is for. Right. So that's what we
Exactly.
want to do. Right.
Thank
So
you.
yes. And I love it. Jamie's
And I
turning
feel like
his.
we really focused on our strengths too, because
Yes.
I'm good at like coming up with ideas and implementing them quickly, and you're good at making it look beautiful, and you're like an expert live streamer, and I don't do a lot of live streaming, but I do a lot of interviewing. And so it took me 230 episodes to be ready for you, but we're complementing each other well.
I love it. Yes, and we did. And this was really easy. And then that's the other thing. So when you look at just opportunities to collaborate with people, to just to go further, is look for people where your strengths are they don't have to be a match, but they have to be the right mix, right? So that you can leverage one another. And love it. So I love the fact that Jamie is collaborating. And this is what I'm talking about. This is what I want this format to be about, is again that creator collaborators, and just let's collaborate together. What about a weekly, fortnightly feedback log? today I asked a person for a feedback on project X. They said I should take a look at thing Y. I look at it and learn the following things. I love that. See, Jamie, now you're just out of control, Jamie. You're just like, listen, I'm writing my blog post while I'm sharing with the world, and I love
Tag
it.
me in that blog post.
Yes, exactly. Definitely tag us, right? So you've got this going on, Jamie. And again, this is this is what also LinkedIn also wants to see is more people taking their efforts. And then we've seen the prompt, do you want to turn this into a post? Well, Jamie's definitely saying yes on that. So this is what we want. I want to encourage as we continue to see more creator collabs here with Share Jones. So guys, I am really excited. We kept it. Let's see. We are almost at the hour mark, so that's awesome. So guys, thank you guys so much for watching. Rina, thank you for being my first collaborator, someone who planted a seed that grew into this. I appreciate you so much. And this was definitely a great start to an awesome collaboration.
Aw, thank you for letting me be your first. I love being people's first.
I love it too. Okay, hold on for just a second as I close out the show. So, guys, thank you guys so much for watching the show. You're definitely going to see more of this, and I'm just looking forward to just collaborating both with the collaborators that I bring onto the show, but also the collaboration that happens in the comments, because that's what this is about. This is a community of creators and collaborators that we can co-create together and just make LinkedIn, YouTube, and Facebook and Twitter a better space. And we can share and grow together. And that's what makes learning fun. Also, speaking of learning, next week, Tuesday, I'm back to Just As Share Live. And I'm going to be talking about this is more inside stuff. So if you've been struggling with what you didn't do over the last 2 years, because when the pandemic first started, is like, if you don't write a book, if you don't get a pay grade, if you don't get a promotion, if you don't do this, if you don't do that, if you don't start your podcast, if you didn't do this during the pandemic, you just wasted all that time. Well, that's not true, right? So when's the best time to build your brand? Let's say 25 years ago, sure, depending on how old you are. But when's the next best time to start working on your brand? Right now. So if you are in that mind space of regret, of looking at your past brand, your missed opportunities of your brand's past, I want to help you with some actionable advice to move your brand forward. So stay tuned to Tuesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Just As Share Live is coming back, and we are going to move your brand forward. Trust me, I'll be preaching to the choir as far as the things that I haven't done that I wanted to do, but that's in my brand's past. It's all about moving forward. So I'll be giving you some advice and some actionable next steps that you can move your brand to the next level as we move into this new space. So guys, thank you so much for watching the first episode of Creator Collabs. There's more to come on that. And I will see you in a future episode. So I thank you again so much for watching.